All right, so we are still waiting on a winner. A lot of the key swing states are still counting the votes, and this is a big story. Like, this is a really big story, and it has the potential to cause a lot of division. Like, a lot of I mean, there already is a lot of division, but I mean, like, make the amount of division that exists now look like nothing. And the reason why is that no matter what happens, there's going to be a very large percent of people that are going to be very upset. Now, why is that? I mean, let's first talk about the reality of the situation. The reality of the situation, I think, is, and I think it's fairly obvious, is that Trump has won. Trump should win. But these states are finding out ways to cheat, basically. Given and here's I think there's a few reasons that we know this. I mean, the main one being is that why is it all states, like why is it all swing states that Trump is ahead in, at least by a small degree, that are the ones that aren't that haven't, released their final results? Why is that? I think Arizona might be a slight exception to that, but still, like, why is it all swing states? Like, why is it why aren't we waiting on the final results in states that we know, that it's very obvious which side it's going to go one way or the other, right? So I think that's very suspicious, right? Like, that's very suspicious that the states that still haven't announced are swing states, and not only that, like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin are all ones where Trump is up in, I mean, some of them by into the hundreds of thousands of votes. It seems a little bit too much of a coincidence for me to just brush that off. Um, and so that brings me to the fact that I think it's clear there's voter fraud going on. And like I said, the problem here is that if Trump loses, the left is going to come up with another baseless, made up conspiracy theory to justify their worldview, right? I mean, the same way they did with Russia collusion. So that's going to happen if Trump wins. If Trump doesn't win, it's not for sure. I would definitely acknowledge that it's not for sure, but it's highly likely that he lost due to voter fraud and or other forms of shady tactics. And that's going to cause a lot of problems as well because it's probably going to go to the courts. If it goes to the Supreme Court, they'll probably rule in favor of Trump, not because they're biased, but because it's reality, and that's going to cause a lot of division. So um, definitely look out for that because that's going to, like I say, it's going to cause a lot of division. It's going to cause a lot of division. And the big problem, I mean, I think another thing to point out, I guess, is why can't they have the votes? Like, why couldn't they have had the votes counted last night? Even if it took them to the middle of the night, if it took them till 3, 4 a.m. to get them counted, like, why can't they do it? Like, almost, I mean, pretty much every other state could. Like, Florida is a very large state. They knew Trump had won fairly early. Like, that was, I mean, the mainstream media waited forever to call it, but it was fairly obvious fairly early that Trump was going to win Florida. So why in the world can't they do this with these other states? And that's another thing that really bothered me is that you had several states that Trump was clearly going to win, like clearly going to win, that they waited till the absolute last minute to call, but yet many places, including Fox News, they were pretty bad too. Um, they called Arizona for Biden long before it was a shoe-in. They called Virginia for Biden long before it was a shoe-in. So again, the bias is what really gets me, and I guess this is one of the main reasons why I would support someone like Trump is that I can't stand the bias. I can't stand the establishment. That I'm not even a huge fan of Trump and a lot of his policies, but I can't stand the mainstream media and the establishment even more, right? So that's why I kind of tend to side with it. And I think most people would agree with that. So anyway, Jagmeet Singh made a fool of himself yesterday. He tweeted out yesterday morning, vote him out. In 4 years, Trump has placed kids in cages, fan the flames of hatred and division, failed 230,000 Americans left dead because of the virus. Trump has made the world a more dangerous place for all of us and hope I see him lose. Now again, this ranges on outright lies to just complete projection. Number one, It was the Obama administration that started the cages thing, and the fact that so many people still don't know that is absolutely insane. Um, the hatred and division isn't coming from Trump. Like, the hatred and division is coming from the mainstream media, specifically, and the left. Right, that's where the majority of the hatred and division is coming. As far as the whole virus situation goes, it was the Democrats that were the ones that were downplaying it originally. Like, they'll point out the fact that Trump said he wanted to downplay it as well, but the Democrats wanted to downplay it even more, right? Like, they were the ones that were telling people to go celebrate Chinese New Year and, go to the movies in New York, and they didn't want a travel ban. Like, again, if the Democrats were in charge, it would have been worse, right? It objectively would have been worse. So it's absolutely insane to suggest. Now, again, Trump makes the world a more dangerous place. Again, that's completely false. It's objectively false. Number one, because Trump has been less of a warmonger than Bush, Obama, and Clinton would have been. And there's no debate on that. It's very clear. And not to mention, too, Trump has called for, and put in a lot of times, deporting violent, illegal aliens, right? So again, the idea that Trump has made the world more dangerous is absolutely insane as well. Now again, now that we've debunked pretty much everything he said, the worst thing about it too is I think that nobody knows, like no one in the States knows who you are, Jagmeet Singh. Like nobody knows and nobody will know because he's an election away from becoming irrelevant, right? Like the NDP would be irrelevant if there was an election held. And the way we know that again is that if the NDP and him were in good shape, he would force an election, right? So it's very funny that nobody really knows who you are, Jagmeet Singh, specifically Donald Trump. I guarantee you that if he was asked, he wouldn't know who you are. So yeah, he's kind of irrelevant. And getting away from the election talks here, again, we see another article here about CBC talking about opioid deaths and mental health getting out of control. And, we've seen so many of these articles, it's not even funny. And the question I always ask is that how bad is it going to have to get for us to admit, yeah, what we've been doing hasn't worked? Like, how bad is it going to have to get? And the really big problem is that it's going to have to get a lot worse. Like, it's going to have to get a lot worse because governments have committed to just continuing to double down and double down and double down and double down until we can't double down anymore. And, before we know it, we're going to be left with, double digit unemployment, and the virus situation is going to be no better than when we started. Like, this is the crazy thing about this is that if what we're doing is working, then why aren't the numbers reflecting it? If the numbers aren't reflecting it, well, then we shouldn't be doing it. It's so obvious, it's not even funny. And the last thing I wanted to bring up is kind of an ironic thing from Clay Travis here saying the Girl Scouts removed a Twitter post congratulating Amy Coney Barrett for becoming the fifth female Supreme Court justice after Blue Checkmark Brigade was outraged, post praising RBG and Hillary Clinton, not surprisingly, are still up. Now again, this is the thing that I can't stand about number one, the strong empowered female garbage is that the reality is that they're only happy for you and they're only congratulatory for you when you're on the left, right? If you're on the left, then you're the greatest person in the world. If you're not on the left, then you're not. And that's why I think anybody who still takes modern feminism seriously is absolutely insane. And two, people who still trust and believe in this garbage, again, it's absolutely insane. Like, if you wanted to give a real world example of a most strong, empowered female, Amy Coney Barrett would be one of the best examples of that. She would be one of the best examples of that. She has, what, six, seven kids, and is now on the highest court in the land, and even before that was a very high-ranking judge. And not only that, she's like what, 50? She's not even that old, at least as far as being a judge goes. So again, this idea that like how in the world would you not want to use this as an example of the whole strong empowered female? Like again, it's absolutely insane. But again, the reason that they don't do it is because all of these ideas, the reality is that they exist to push left wing politics. That's why feminism exists. That's why Black Lives Matter exists. That's why Antifa exists. That's why all of it. Now, again, they may not agree on the politics, but the one thing that they do agree on is that they want to push things further leftward. They just disagree on just how far leftward, right? So that is something that's very telling. And again, like I say, I think anybody who still takes these movements seriously, like, you really need to reevaluate your worldview, because I don't think it could be much more wrong and asinine if you tried. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. If you haven't already, make sure you follow me on Twitter, BitChute, Parler. All those links are in the description. Again, also if you want to donate, you can do that as well. Um, just check out those links in the description. Like I say, hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already.